All right, welcome back. Hopefully you had the opportunity to stretch your legs and network with some of the incredible women here today. Our next panel is comprised of UCLA women who have followed non-traditional paths, have started their own businesses, provide their community with opportunity, and are an inspiration to others. Please welcome to the stage our Women in Business panel. Yeah. Woo! Today, our moderator is Tiffany Chin. She will lead our Women's in Business panel. Tiffany learned from her mom that real estate isn't simply about facilitating home search and purchase. It's an opportunity to provide emotional, logistic, and financial stability throughout her client's journey. Chin got her real estate salesperson's license in 2007 and her real estate broker's license 4 years later. Tiffany is incredibly passionate about real estate as a vehicle to empower women and serves as Bruin Professional's current president, which is why we knew she would be the perfect moderator for today. So Tiffany, panel, if you could please join me up front, we will look to begin. Welcome. Come on up, please, panel. We're going to do introductions when everyone's up here.
Is it already on?
Yep, microphones are on.
It's a nice stool, right? Hi, ladies. Thank you all for joining us today. All right, so I had my introduction. Do you each want to introduce yourselves? Let's just go down the row. Sure.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rupa Dash. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of World Women Foundation. And also, I'm a futurist. I predict future. Predict future in the sense I look at the future, how women will contribute and reshape and design the future that we are part of. So this is.
I'm so glad I got to sit next to you so I can know what my future is. My name is Shirley Wang. I graduated from UCLA in 1990, and yes, go UCLA, right? And then since 1994, I founded the company Plastpro, Inc., and I think it's one of the world's largest fiberglass door manufacturers. And the other responsibilities I have, I sit on the board of Douglas Emmett, a REIT, and the other responsibility I have is being a trustee at Harvard Westlake Columbia University, and as well as I was the chair of UCLA Foundation.
That's all. Hey, everybody. I think I represent those of us in the room that are multi-hyphenated, so I am a very passionate person. I am Celia Ward-Wallace. I am the CEO of South LA Café, as well as Market, as well as Foundation, as well as Hospitality Company. I also have the Ward-Wallace Group coaching and consulting firm, and my passion is really activating people to their purpose, whether that leads them into business, in particular women in business, and helping them create mission-driven businesses that make an impact.
Hello. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Roselma Samala, and I'm here today representing Genever. It's a lounge in historic Filipino town that I started with two of my girlfriends that we went to undergrad here at UCLA. But I just want to take the opportunity to introduce myself through my ancestry as well. I'm the daughter of Elmer Iktiban Samala and Rosalita Garcia Samala, and it's through them, through my families, through my ancestors, that I got the spirit of entrepreneurism. I got my family, my faith. I received the courage and the adventurism to become who I am today. And so I just wanted to bring them into this space and honor them, because without those who came before me, I literally would not be here. So thank you.
Hello, my name's Angélica Gutiérrez. I'm that's Cheryl. I just saw her in Latinas in Hollywood panel Wednesday night, right? I'm super excited to be here. I'm a double Bruin. I was here for my undergrad. I also earned a Ph.D. at the UCLA Anderson School of Management. So thank you. So now I'm a tenured, I should say tenured business professor. I earned tenure in 2019, and I'm still celebrating. Thank you. Thank you. I know, I'm super excited. So I teach at the undergraduate level as well as the graduate level, so MBAs, executive MBAs, and my primary areas of expertise are in negotiations and also imposter syndrome and imposterization. So I'm looking forward to speaking about that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And, but in preparing for this panel last night, I was reading the speech that I wrote for my grandmother before her funeral, the night before her funeral. And it just warms my heart to be amongst all these women who have done just amazing things, and amongst you women who have done amazing things. And I think she would be proud and to see what you guys have accomplished and to hear what everyone has to say today. So thank you so much. All right, so let's get into it. So starting a business is no small feat, and there's so many things to consider. I remember the branding, marketing, product design, legal, admin work, and hiring, just to name a few. So what was your dare to soar moment? That moment when you took that leap of faith and committed to this journey. And Roselma, we can start off with your journey.
That's a hard question, I think, to answer because I know. Well, for one thing, and I appreciate the question, but the one thing that makes it difficult is because I feel for myself, if I commit to something, I commit to it, to see it through the ups and downs. And I think that's what makes entrepreneurs, like, you have to have that spirit when you start your own business, because just thinking of the idea, I feel like, is also a leap of faith. But I think what confirmed the decision was all these little moments of affirmation. We started out, it took us, I think, 5 years before we actually opened. And we were diligent about doing the market research, making sure that our name was relevant and so on. But it's just those little moments of affirmation, because we did pop-ups, we had a Kickstarter campaign, and that it resonated with people, that people were willing to give us their time, give us their money, their commitments to us, and just all of the support that we got from not just friends and family, but strangers who thought the idea of being the first woman-owned bar in Los Angeles, owned by women of color, doing it without, a man on our lease or a man as part of our LLC. And it was confirmed because, after almost 5 years, we actually closed last year. But before closing, our mission and our message was confirmed because we got a James Beard nomination for our bar program. Thank you. And we got top 50 in North America. So, and one of the few women-owned bars that were on that list. So for me, it's those little moments and to keep going, those affirmations and just seeing those.
That's so inspiring. Thank you. Celia, what about you?
First of all, I'd love to know by a show of hands, how many in this room are either entrepreneurs or interested in entrepreneurship? Okay, awesome. As an entrepreneur or small business owner, that's one of the things you want to know is who your target market is, right? And who you're talking to. So I want to make sure we have people in the room that what we're talking about is, relevant to you. Also, the thing about being an entrepreneur or a business owner is you have to be like a little bit crazy, right? And so you have to dare to soar every day. And the only way you will actually make it is if you're so freaking crazy that you keep waking up every day and you keep going. Because there will inevitably be a million setbacks. And, a lot of people decide they're made for corporate America or for education or civil service because they cannot tolerate, they're so risk adverse, right? So if you're a risk adverse person and you want safe and you want to know what's going to happen, business is not for you, right? Now, granted, you want to have some people on your team that are risk adverse and are pragmatic, like my bestie Brandy in the room, Brandy Barrera, who's also alumni. I call her in when I want somebody to fact check and poke holes and tell me bring me back down to earth, right? But on a daily basis, entrepreneurship, you literally have to dare to soar. You are going against all odds. You are going against imposter syndrome, especially as women, every single day. And so for me, it's literally, that's why I'm so passionate about making sure that what people are doing is actually solving a problem that we need in the world, and something that is personally relevant to them, right? What is your why? In my opinion, it's great. You can have a million business concepts. You can be driven by money. Some people are. But at the end of the day, you have to have that clear why and that mission behind your business, because it's so hard to do that you're not going to wake up and do it every day until you reach a pinnacle of success if you're not passionate about it and you don't feel like, I have to do this. There's literally nothing else I could be doing with my life other than this. This is my purpose. And even then, yes, thank you for that. Even then, you have to be prepared to lose it all and then start all over again if you're crazy enough, right? So like for me, my husband and I have been together 26 years. We actually met at UCLA in 1997, and we've done one real estate venture or the other for all that time. We now are so-called very successful with South LA Café that's become this, household name kind of in Los Angeles. But, and if you don't know, follow us. You're late to the party if you don't know. But people don't realize we had a completely failed real estate business that we had to foreclose all of our properties and face bankruptcy and build our credit back and create a whole new concept. And so people were like, oh my God, you've only been open 3 years. You're winning all these awards. You have all these different locations. You guys are the golden children. Like, how did you do it? And I'm like, it's called 25 years of daring to soar, right?
Thank you. Now, Rupa, I know you can see the future, but what was your dare to soar moment?
Well, I didn't see my future 10 years ago because I was just talking to my 10-year-old daughter, and she said, Mama, courage is an underdog. And I was like, yes, I hope I knew that 10 years ago. Because I moved to this country as an immigrant, and I came with a big dream, and I came, as a spouse, and then I realized that I'm a housewife overnight. And then you have all this qualification, you have all this ability to contribute to a country like America, but you're not allowed to work. You know how it feels, because I know that in UCLA, so many of us come as immigrants, and I'm speaking to those women who are trying to find their voice. And of course, I found a job, but that wasn't paying me what I truly deserved. I decided that this is how I don't want to be treated. This is how I don't want another immigrant woman to go through this. I just had $400. I started my foundation, which is the World Women Foundation. And now we are a community of 55,000 women, providing access to 55,000 women, and also coaching. The good thing about this foundation is I did not have the money to pay to all sorts of membership to go to different organizations. Everybody told me, if you start an organization without membership, you will fail. Look at me. I'm the most successful women organization in the world.
Amazing.
Yes. So the thing is, don't sit with an idea. If you see a problem, I always say, see it, dream it, do it, and disrupt it as if nobody else can do it. That's my story in a nutshell, but I would say, that's my dare to soar moment, Pick up the phone, whatever money you have, jump into it. If you fail, you will figure it out.
You'll figure it out. I love it.
Is that your 10-year-old?
That's my 10-year-old.
Stand up.
Aww. All right, this one's for Shirley. What has been your path and inspiration to both building and expanding your business?
Well, it's really just like women here, but I would say, would be my family, especially the women in my family. I started off because of my mom. My mom got divorced when I was 9, and her divorce left her, I guess, penniless. And that drove me to say, hey, I got to be financially capable. I can't be dependent on anybody else. And then I guess the other thing was my grandmother. I mean, she went through World War II, through the Communist Revolution, and she had to immigrate from China to Taiwan. And then she started small businesses in Taiwan, eventually Brazil, South Africa, and she only had a middle school education. She couldn't speak the local languages, but, eventually she got to, have her workers not only understand her, but could speak broken Chinese back to her. So I'm sitting here like, man, if she can do that, everyone can do anything. If you have the determination and you have the hard work, you can do it. So all of us can do it. If she can do it, we can do it.
Thank you. And Shirley, with multiple successful businesses, how do you balance your work and family?
I guess that's the thing, right? It's a constant struggle. I mean, I think we all experience it. You feel guilty at work and you feel guilty at home. It's never, the job is never finished, right? It's never you're doing a perfect job. So, but at this thing I think is really important for me is that I still put my family first, because when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be thinking, oh, should I have done that deal? That extra deal. You're going to think about, I wish I had more time with people I love, and as growing up, I think, your kids don't require or need material growth, but they need your time. And if they know that you put them as a priority, they appreciate it. And I think that's what, that guides me in what I do.
Great, thank you. So a lot of us go through something called imposter syndrome. I've heard a little bit about that. Wikipedia defines it as a psychological occurrence where an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Now, Angélica, I know you've done a lot of work in this area. Can you speak to this?
Yes, I would love to. I can actually speak for days and days about imposter syndrome. I do want to start off, though, by saying that those of us that research this phenomenon extensively don't refer to it as an imposter syndrome. And we refer to it as imposter phenomenon, and the reason why we avoid the word syndrome is because it can be very stigmatizing, right? When you think about a syndrome, it can make it seem as though it's some type of a mental illness, right? Or some kind of a disease, a health condition. And that can make it even more stigmatizing for people to openly discuss their personal experiences with it. But I know that most people refer to it as imposter syndrome. I'm actually guilty of using the same term. One of the things that I didn't mention earlier is that I write, I'm a contributor for Inc., some of you may know Top Business Magazine. And so my editors, every time I try to use imposter phenomenon, they're like, no, use imposter syndrome because people refer to it as such. So how many of you have heard of this phenomenon? So many of you have, right? So there were some hands that didn't go up. So it refers to just very quickly feelings of inadequacy, right? That some individuals may experience. So people may feel unintelligent, incompetent, and they may have this fear that other people around them are going to discover that they actually don't belong in the positions that they occupy. So they may think to themselves, I got this job, or I got this investor, to put capital into my business, or I got into this competitive university because I was just lucky. Or they just needed a woman or a person of color, right? They just needed to check off the box. So those of us who experience it make external attributions for our achievements. And so one of the questions that I often get is, okay, so for those of us, and I say us because I'll be real with you, despite degrees and awards and tenure and everything, I still continue to experience it even now. And so one of the questions that I often get from audiences is, okay, if I'm experiencing imposter syndrome, what are some strategies that I can implement at the individual level to help counter the effects? And I've written about these individual level strategies. So one of the most powerful strategies is to simply name it. There's extensive research, especially in the area of psychology, that does find that once we name whatever it is that we fear, we essentially take away some of its power. So name it. It's really a thing. It's called the imposter phenomenon. Another important strategy is to simply normalize it, right? It's important for us. There's power in simply knowing that other Highly intelligent, successful individuals continue to experience imposter phenomenon even now, despite records of success, right? And we know high-profile individuals such as former Chief Operating Officer of Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg, a U.S. Supreme Court Justice, one of my personal favorites, Sonia Sotomayor, another personal favorite, media executive and longtime running talk show host, Oprah Winfrey. They all continue to experience imposter phenomenon. So name it, normalize it. It's also important for us to try to understand what's triggering these imposter feelings, because once we identify the root, we'll be in a much better position to counter its effects. And the last strategy that I often promote, but it's very difficult for me to embrace on a personal level, is to try to view imposter phenomenon and our experience with it as a positive thing, right? Because if we think about it, we don't experience these imposter feelings or feelings of inadequacy when we're playing it safe or when we're playing small. It's when we decide to step outside of our comfort zones and start striving for something bigger and better that we begin to feel like imposters, right? And that's actually a sign of both professional and personal growth. Now, I just have to add this because it's an important area of my research. So one of the things that you may notice, and one of the biggest issues that I've had with the research and the discussions around imposter syndrome, is that the research and the discussion seem to characterize the individual as the issue. And even the strategies that many of us promote, I'm guilty of it as well, is that these strategies take this fix the individual approach, without recognizing that perhaps it's the environment or the context that we're in that may be triggering these imposter feelings. So perhaps the issue is not us, but the systems and the environments that we're in. And that phenomenon, that idea that it's the environment that may be triggering these imposter feelings, is what I refer to as imposterization. How many of you have heard of that term, imposterization? Okay, so the people whose hands went up are the ones that have been reading my research. So, and you were at the program too. Yes, Alicia was Latinas in Hollywood on Wednesday night as well. So you may not have heard of imposterization because it's a term that I just coined. I wrote about it for the first time 2021. It's been officially published in a top academic journal. So now it's going to be a thing. And I use the term imposterization to refer to the policies, practices, and seemingly harmless interactions that we may have that may lead us to question our intelligence and our competence and our sense of belonging in different environments. So again, powerful strategies to try to identify what's triggering these imposter feelings. Is it really me? Is it a low self-esteem or a low perceived self-efficacy? Or are these feelings being triggered by some of the policies and practices or interactions that I'm having in certain environments? So I wanted to put a plug in for imposterization. It's important for us to identify what the real issue is. It may not be us, but perhaps the context that we find ourselves in.
It's important that we name it, right? Thank you. Rupa, what's your experience with imposter phenomenon / syndrome?
I will give a personal example because, I still feel that way in certain environments, specifically, as a woman of color and even like women in general, when we walk into rooms and we're asking for money and we're asking for things that we deserve, we kind of know that, okay, how much we should ask or how much less we should ask or should be very assertive or we should be coming as bossy or, we have all these things going on in our mind. But, when I started my career, I always walked into a room with these three things in my mind, like, okay, I will be underestimated, I will be undervalued, and I will be underserved, no matter what. And then, after a few years of going through that phenomena, I realized, how about this? Like, I say what exactly my worth is and what I bring to the table. A perfect example, I walk into a room when I was 7 months pregnant. And I won't name the company, it's one of the top Hollywood companies. And the head of talent looks at me and he said, "What can I do for you?" Immediately, I kind of tell him, "I can do a lot for you." And he his mind really changed. And I kind of took my chair and sat down. I said, "This is what I can do for you." He said, "You come back to me once you're ready." I said, "I am ready." I am ready. And I tell you, I walked out of that room 7 months pregnant with an offer. I got my first job. And it's just that, and it's part of the way you kind of tell yourself and show up and ask. It takes a lot of training and a lot of guts, but hey, we have guts and we can do this. That's something I wanted to add, it just as from a personal experience, because I'm sure everybody goes through this in many different ways.
Thank you. You do have guts. Everyone has guts. All right. As Bruins, we are mission-driven. One of our true Bruin values is service. Each of you have made decisions about your business that will help your community. We'll start with Celia. How did this guide your business service?
Okay, well, again, my primary business at this point that we're most known for is called South LA Café. It's a community-based coffee shop, market, and cultural center located in the heart of South Central LA. My husband and I live there. My husband's from South Central. I grew up there. My parents are community organizers. So even though I look like this, I've been one of the few people who looks like this who actually lives in that community. And my husband and my daughters are Black, and that's the primary community, as well as Black and brown folks and lower income working people. So we saw about 3 or 4 years ago that there was a trend that we're all aware of, is that the rising cost of housing in Los Angeles was going crazy, and that all the people from the West Side, no offense, UCLA, and people who live over here, you know, they started to not be able to afford to live in their high-priced housing over here, and they started to discover, aka colonize, our community of South Central. So my husband and I, who had a lot more privilege than the average person who lives in that community, we'd always be able to drive all around the city to do whatever we needed to do. And so even though we were living in the middle of a food desert, meaning, again, if you live over here, you go outside, there's a Whole Foods, a Sprouts, a, Lenders, or they're everywhere you go, right? And you have all the healthy food options that you could ever desire. You can never imagine what it's like to live in a community where you go miles and you can't find a grocery store, right? And you go miles and you can't find even a Subway, right? Somewhere just healthy, right? So we were able to overcome that because we would go other places. But because of my upbringing, my political education, I knew that was because of structural inequality and racism that existed in South Central after white flight and the introduction of crack cocaine and the 3 strikes, criminalization of Black people in our community. So there's social issues that created the circumstances. All of that to say, with our business acumen, we realized the times were changing in our community. We needed to hold on to spaces where the people who were from the community could come and still see people like them and have their culture represented, and also provide access to fresh, healthy, and affordable food. So we put together, what is a commodity? What is a product that people need and want every single day? So when you're thinking of your business model, that is key. What are you selling? It's not just what you want to sell. It's not about you created something you think is so great. That is not going to make a business. You have to create something that is so great that a lot of people want, and they want it every single day. So for us, we were business generalists. We had no particular expertise in a particular field of business, just how to manage and run a business, right? So we decided our product was going to be coffee. So we created a coffee shop, and we knew our tagline is coffee, community, connection. We knew that the coffee was going to bring the community, and the connection is what they were going to receive. And so our hook was, let's create an amazing coffee shop that has $2 drip coffee. So if for the people who are hopping on the bus and just want a great cup of coffee, we can say, you can still come here and get high quality coffee for a reasonable price. And the people who were the bougie people who wanted the third wave lattes with the extra shot and the half cap soy, whatever, we had that too. But even so, it was a $4 latte, a $5 latte, right? So we like to say we pay more than Starbucks, but our prices are lower than Starbucks, right? And it's doable. And the way that it's been doable is because we're mission driven. And so when we have this hook that is truly a part of why we were created, the community wants us there. They want to see us win. And so we've doubled down on our social services through the pandemic with our food distribution program, with our daily vaccines and COVID testing, as well as our health fairs. And the more we give, the more we get, right? The law of attraction, it comes back. So that's how we've done it. Thank you.
Roselma, how has service driven your business?
Well, similarly, you know, as an undergrad at UCLA, part of the Filipino community, you know, dealing with affirmative action when I was an undergrad, and Kathy also mentioned about, you know, the riots at that time. I feel like my exposure at UCLA is what drove me to be that rebel in anything that I do, but incorporating the community along that path. So when we were opening, so my day job is in philanthropic grant making, where I have to deal with imposter syndrome all the time because I'm working with primarily white presenting families who you question, did they hire me because, you know, I'm a person of color, but then once I give them my perspectives, they shut me down, right? So it's like, why am I here? But anyway, it's those experiences that drove us in our mission and how we operate to remember those experiences. So, you know, we incorporated the community. We're all Filipina, so we incorporated our culture. We incorporated the community at large to see how we can partner with other businesses. We did a collaborative. It's something that I think it was just innate in us. You know, Filipinos are also stereotypically known for their hospitality. You know, we started our business over mimosas, but our vision was to advocate for women, to advocate for people of color in the hospitality industry. And when we opened, you know, we would ask our vendors, is this brand owned by women? Is this brand led by women? You know, do you have any brands that are owned or led by people of color? And they didn't have an answer, but over the 5 years that we were in business, they just came to us moving forward. And so, you know, keeping that in mind of how we could bring up everybody and abundance for everybody, we don't have to compete, even though we might just be a block away from each other, but how, you know, the pie is big, right? There's no one set size of the pie, we can make it bigger. And so, you know, we always wanted to figure out how to incorporate that and also just look at the industry differently. You know, we closed after 5 years because we have horrible landlords. And it's something, I know, it's like horrible landlords. And yeah, and it's something that we're like, oh, well, they're all like that. And we said, well, we're not going to deal with it anymore. And, you know, it's like taking that power. It's like, why should we give them the hard-earned money that we have? And it's just being, you know, daring to do something different because you know that it's not right, but just because everyone else was doing it, they think that's the right way. So it's just always just having, thinking differently about your community as well and prioritizing who you want to advocate for, keeping that at the forefront of your message in all you do, operationally, marketing, who you talk to, you know, just keeping that all in mind, like who was there to support you at the beginning, throughout, at the end, in the future, you know, it's your community.
I love that. I love that you're so intentional with who you'll do business with. Great. Shirley, you raised the expectations for the UCLA Foundation Board around student support and scholarships. How did you get all of that done, and what did you find different about university politics and politics within your business world?
So I'm gonna say that's in
Okay.
two folds. So we raised about $1 billion for UCLA for student support and scholarships. So UCLA. And I have to say, I think what you do in life and whatever you do in entrepreneurship and business and whatever you do is to approach it with authenticity and gratefulness. So I think, what I did was that I told my story. I told my story was the fact that, my mom didn't have money to pay for my college tuition. So then she asked me to write to my dad to say, hey, could you help pay for Shirley's tuition? And he wrote back and said, well, if you call my wife Mom, then, maybe I'll be able to send you the funds to pay for the tuition. And of course, when I saw my mom get divorced at 9, and 9 years later, I'm like, no, my mom struggled a lot. I'm not doing that, And then, but my mom knew that I needed the money for tuition. So she insisted I write that letter. And I wrote that letter, right? But I never heard back from him. So after that, I'm so grateful to scholarships. And, so it allowed me to go to UCLA, graduate from UCLA, and have the opportunities that I have. So that's where I came back and told people the story. And that's why they know you should support scholarships in UCLA, right? So through authenticity. And then regarding, university politics, nonprofit politics, business politics, people are people. Politics biases are everywhere. When I was at UCLA, and I just had given a speech as the chair of UCLA, and I came off the speech, and then someone said, "Oh, so where?" They thought I was a staff member. Where do you work at Murphy Hall? And I was like saying, it was a disconnect because they couldn't see a person who looked like me, Asian girl. How could I possibly be the chair of the UCLA Foundation? But, I think it's really just about having a seat at the table and doing good work and letting others be exposed that, women can have large responsibilities. And, when I started at the board, Julie's there, it was only 23% women. But now there's over 50, after I've been chair, it was over 50% women. So, and so I think it's just doing the work. And then it same with business. When I started the business in the millwork industry, it was old white boys network. There's nobody. There weren't women. There weren't anybody who looked like me at all, So, but then, and I remember walking into places and people say, oh, what's this Asian girl doing here, And then they would say, hey, don't buy from her, buy American. And I was sitting here like saying, I thought that was pretty funny because I was born in New York and I felt just as American as everybody else, So, but after 29 years in the business, I think the industry trusts, what I do and what my company does. And, I hope that, we've opened doors, since I'm a door company, opened doors for for diversity. And I'm really happy that right now when I go down the trade show, I see a lot of people who look like me. So it's just being there and showing up.
That's great. Thank you. So we probably have like 4 minutes left, but I want to hear from both Angélica and Rupa. So you're already wearing multiple hats when you're a small business owner. Add on top of that the intersectional identities we each carry. How has that changed over the years, and how does it affect how you show up in the industry? Angélica, I want to start with you.
Sure. So I'll just start off by saying, of course, I have to wear my professor hat. So the term intersectionality, some of you may be familiar with it. It was a term that was coined by a professor and theorist, Kimberly Crenshaw, back in 1989. And so she uses a term to refer to the multiple identities that some of us may assume that can actually make us susceptible to biases and different forms of discrimination. So we may have identities as a function of our gender, our race, our religion, age, socioeconomic status, etc. And so intersectionality in the context of entrepreneurship is actually a fairly new research direction. And so what the research finds is that intersectionality can actually be an advantage, but it can also be a disadvantage. So as an entrepreneur, if you do have multiple identities, it can be an advantage because you're in a position where you're able to better understand and address the needs of your diverse clients. It can be a disadvantage because a lot of the research does find that you're more susceptible to discrimination and biases, especially when it comes from investors. they tend to be unwilling to invest in ventures of women of color because they are perceived as less intelligent, less competent, and their ventures are actually perceived as being more risky. So there's a lower likelihood of getting capital investment. So I'll just say that in terms of intersectionality, it can be an advantage and a disadvantage based on what we know on the research. And I'm sure you can speak to the practitioner perspective.
Yeah, I think I'll piggyback on that. Having multiple identities does give you a lot of advantage in many rooms. You see a particular problem through many different lenses because you definitely have so much of exposure, experience, and life experience that really helps you to shape the problem in a very different way and find solutions that typically would not come from a singular, I don't think anybody has a single form of identity, but this overlaying of different identities that a woman from India, the gender, the socioeconomic background, the immigrant, all those definitely plays a very important role and brings a lot of advantage. But the disadvantage I would say is, again, sometimes your voice is not heard. And sometimes you're underestimated, again, undervalued. But I also think, there is a power in underestimation. You're always, as I tell my 10-year-old says, you become the underdog. And once you're the underdog, you know how to play the right game and win the game. So there's definitely advantage in that. So I would just say that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you for sharing your stories.
Perfect. Thank you. We are going to do a couple of questions. So if anybody in the room has one, I haven't gotten to the back. So does anyone in the back have one? All right, I'm going to come to you. Here we go. Cue the music. Just kidding. Here you go.
Thank you to the speakers. This was great. I think maybe a consequence or a contributing factor to imposterism may be being taught at young ages to be humble and modest and not to be the loudest in the room or to brag about your accomplishments or to acknowledge them to yourself or in public. Do you have any methods or any tips on addressing, balancing of being humble with not feeling like an imposter in the room?
There's actually a couple of effective strategies. That was the first. Do you guys want to know the first one that popped into my head? When you're facing a certain degree of hesitation or ambivalence, ask yourself, what would a white male do, right? and use that. I mean, we obviously can't exhibit the same behaviors, right? Or we can't really employ the same approaches because we'll be susceptible to backlash. But just answering that question, what would a white male do, can help provide us with a certain direction in terms of the path that we want to go towards, right? One of the most effective strategies is to simply take an inventory of all of the things that you've achieved, like your degrees, your professional and academic accomplishments, and really reminding yourself, going back to your earlier point about value, recognizing that you do have value that you can use to contribute to, other people. So that tends to be very effective. And also, if you're ever feeling like an imposter, it's very powerful to have a confidant with whom you can have that conversation. So simply sharing with somebody, you know what, these imposter feelings are coming up for me. I don't feel like I'm going to be smart enough. I don't feel like I'm going to be qualified enough to do X, Y, and Z. And that person can ask you a very powerful question. That person can ask you, what evidence is there to demonstrate that you don't have what it takes to occupy that position or to do whatever it is that you're hesitant about? Because that question alone will force us, right, to actively look for data, to look for information, to look for evidence that demonstrates that we're incompetent. And that exercise alone can help us recognize there are no data, right? There is no evidence to suggest that I don't have what it takes. So taking an inventory of your academic and professional accomplishments to simply remind yourself how far you have come and what you have to and the fact that you do have what it takes to get to where you need to be, and having that confidant, that individual with whom you can have that very honest, candid conversation, and that person can ask you that question that's going to force you to actively look for evidence that doesn't really exist. Just a couple, just two.
Okay, we have a question right here, and then we'll grab the one up front.
Yes, unfortunately, mine's not a question, but it just triggered. So thank you so much, ladies, for everything. I'm actually a physician, and I'm also a double Bruin, so undergrad and medical training residency. But it just triggered what you were saying about the white male concept. So I'm a physician, and I have a clinical practice, but another part, and I'm a physician entrepreneur. But a part of my practice also is I serve as a medical legal expert. So I get retained to be an expert. And it's from all over the country. It could be anywhere. But this particular day, a client flew in, an attorney flew in to interview me. And he's a white male, and attractive man. He might have been, checking all the boxes. He probably was about 6'3" or 6'4". And he says to me, "So I'm a white male, and I'm very successful, and my life is going fabulous." He says, "How's that working for you?"
Oh, my.
And so I responded and said, "Thank you for asking." And I went on to tell him, and he retained me and hired me. And so that could be a strategy. I don't know. I take things and take lemons and turn it into lemonade, because every stage is an opportunity. I've been in trial before where I might have been the retained expert for the plaintiff, but then the defense liked what I did and they've hired me for another case. So we just never know. We just never know.
Let's give her an applause, because she's smart. She's smart, competent, and gorgeous. I love that dress.
Thank you. All right, one more question.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for presenting your background to us. I'm a visual communication designer. I develop brands, brand identity, logo, and color system, and so on and so forth, applying it across different media. What I want to ask you is that you all sound so accomplished. I'm curious to know, what is your next goal? What do you want to do after being so, achieved? What do you want to do for retirement? Do you want to continue? Or do you think, like, let's get together and give back to next generation? I don't know. I'm just curious to learn about that, because I'm at that stage too, kind of. I'm like, okay, I've taught, I've had my own clients, I've worked in-house. What do I want to do now? So I'm just curious to hear from you about that.
Well, I guess I don't know. I think in the beginning, you always try to, you're trying to establish yourself. You're putting all the time to get where you want to go, right? And at least be capable, financially capable or whatever, independent. But then right now, when you're at at my age, or, you're a leader in your industry, I think you want to do for the better of society, because that's the legacy you want to do. And so being where in the position that you are in, you can make a difference by saying, you're not trying to just establish it, but you're trying to make it better in the industry, or better for other people, better for women. And that's why I think all of us are sitting here to speak, because we want to raise everybody up, because the tide's here, but we want to raise it to here so that we can all be well together. And I think that's everyone's goal here, and I'm sure you guys are all sitting here for that reason.
Perfect. Oh, go ahead, Celia.
Well, I was just going to say I am very accomplished, and I have lived a long life. I'm 45 years old, and I feel like I'm in my prime, right? So for me, I see a lot of work ahead, a lot of mission-driven impact work ahead, and finally making some money, right? Because that's the thing that we don't talk about. It's like people, purpose, and profit. They can exist and they can go together, right? And so a lot of the early stages of business building is sweat equity, is leveraging all your resources, is a lot of debt. You're leveraging your relationships, your health, your family, you're sacrificing, right? So I'm really looking to the stage where that all starts to begin to pay off. And then I'm able to create generational wealth for my family and for those in my community, and all along creating a blueprint that can be passed along to others. And just a small anecdote that talks to the imposter well, no, the phrase
Phenomenon.
the imposter phenomenon. And also what's next is, we've been opening these coffee shops and we have a market and we have our foundation. So by all means, we are so-called successful, right? But we got contacted this summer by a white woman who landed in LA from Las Vegas in her little business suit and showed up in South Central at our cafe with a little picture on her phone about where at our local natural history museum they wanted to put a South LA cafe, right? So by all means, that's exciting, right? But I've been teaching entrepreneurship and business for 20 years, right? So I was very keen to know there was a bigger picture. There's a bigger contract going on. They're just talking about us for this little corner of it. Well, I contacted the museum and I said, what is going on? Is there a RFP for a bigger contract? And they said, yes. And I said, what is it for? And they said to bring in local minority and women-owned food service restaurants and vendors into the museum. And I said, well, do you have any local women-owned, minority-owned companies competing for the contract? And they said, no. And I said, well, now you do. And if you don't let us compete, we're going to go to the press about how this is, inequitable. And they said, you're absolutely right. You may compete. And so flash forward 6 months and we have that contract. Okay. So it can be done. You have to sometimes be willing to step out into what's uncomfortable and fight for what you believe in. And I also believe in paying people that know more than you to come to the table to help you do the job so that you can get the contracts, right? So there you go.
Thank you, Celia. All right, that's all the time we have for questions. I'm so sorry. Let's give a round of applause for our Woman in Business panel, our moderator and our panelists. Thank you so much for being here today. We're very grateful.